Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Flatirons Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. This show is brought to you by Flatirons Tuning, your source for any aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts. Be sure to check out our store at flatironstuning.com and stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning. Well, welcome back to the Flatirons Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. This is episode number 105. I thought the last episode was 105, but it turns out it's this one. So this one I'm pretty sure is correct at 105. And we've got another special guest with us today. We've got Heather Holler back. Now, Heather, it was not long after you were on the podcast the first time that you posted something up about the Dakar Rally. And
Yes.
I'd reached out like, hey, like we have to talk about this after this happens. And now here we are.
Yeah.
So so thank you very much for making the time. And I'm really excited to see what that experience was like. Can you just kind of maybe explain what the Dakar Rally is first and foremost?
So the Dakar Rally is basically it's known as like the world's toughest race.
Okay. Yeah.
One of if not like the world's toughest races. So they used to have it was originally like the I think the Paris Dakar
Paris Dakar, yeah.
Rally. So they would do it from Paris down all the way through Dakar. And it was usually always held in the Middle East, but because of Taliban things, they did move it around to like South America and stuff. But this
Yeah.
year we were in Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia, the whole race.
The whole race. Yep.
Yeah. And how long is the race?
So I was out there a total of 3 weeks, 21 days. But
Okay.
the race itself is 2 full weeks. I think
Yep.
15 days total.
I think that's right. And is there 2 rest days or something like that?
Well, kind of.
Yeah.
There's technically one.
Okay.
Um, but this year was a little different because of all of the rain. Um,
Oh, ironic for
so
Saudi Arabia. Yeah.
yeah, and somehow I managed to pack rain boots, and I was the only one. So
Well done.
I was very proud of myself. The new kid was prepared. So
It's that rally background. You plan for everything. I'm
you
going to the
have
middle of
to.
the desert. I'm going to bring my snow jacket just in case. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it got freaking cold out there. There was, luckily, I kind of say luckily, for the most part, we didn't ever sleep at night. So we didn't have to actually like worry about the low temperatures. So we were moving when it was the coldest.
Okay.
But there was one night where we were able to get a couple hours of sleep, and I,
Just
I
freezing.
couldn't I couldn't sleep. It was too cold. Yeah.
Wow. Well, and I was thinking about this as we were getting ready to fire up the podcast here. Like road racers, like you think about road racing, and by and large, you can almost like in this context, it's almost like a sprint race. Like to even start getting close to this, like you're talking about like a 12 to 24-hour endurance race is where it starts to get in the ballpark of what the Dakar Rally is. But then even the guys that are doing like 12, 24-hour endurance races, like if you would say, okay, well, hey, why don't you go out and run a stage rally that's over like 2 days and 150 course miles and like 300 transit miles? What do you think about running a stage rally? And they think that's kind of crazy because there's just so much more that can happen to the car that just like the variables at play as a driver, co-driver, as a team in rally compared to like a circuit racing, it's way different. It's a way different environment. And I would bet that most of the people that do stage rally, they hear about like, hey, we've got a seat for you at the car. Do you want to go? And they'd be like, no, no, man, that's just bananas.
Well, that's kind of like, I'm a rally kid. I came from rally and rallycross. And so I was like, oh, yeah, I got this. No worries.
Yeah.
Uh,
Different.
I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I mean, like, I did, but I didn't. And it sucks because, like, I mean, not suck, but, even today it's a lot more bearable than it was back in the day. And it's still really tough.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like they're out anywhere from 8 to 12 to 16 hours a day,
Yeah.
depending on if you get stuck or not. I mean, granted, you still have to make your stage within that certain amount of time, but there were
Yeah.
people that had to sleep out in the desert when their car
Right.
broke. So it's
Well,
crazy.
and from a crew standpoint, like, because I think part of the Dakar is that like you as crew also have to move. Like the course is moving.
Mhm.
You as the crew have to move. Like I mean, how much of your time is spent like having to like set up camp, get ready, the car comes in, help them, then like tear everything down, then you have to go like 200 miles somewhere and all that.
Yeah. So there were we I would say on average, yeah, we move every day, 2 days. There were a couple BVACs where we could stay, I think, 3 nights, which was amazing. But yeah, we basically work on the cars all through the night, and it's not like stage rally where you only have a certain time. You have all night to work on them. Um, and then once the cars leave, if you haven't finished packing up your service area, you finish that and then you haul ass to the next spot, basically. So
Man,
you get most of your sleep in the vans on your way from BVAC to BVAC.
wow. And that's for
Yeah,
2 whole weeks.
2 whole weeks. We
That's
got
crazy.
um we got on average about 4 hours of sleep the first 3 or 4 days we were there
Jeez.
because we were all in at sea camp for I think about 5 days all in all, because we were there about 2 or 3 days before the rally actually started.
Okay.
So we were prepping, doing all that stuff, but there was still a lot of work to be done, and then shakedowns and the prologue and all that stuff. So yeah, we were pushing for 4 days straight.
Wow. And where you're located, I mean, what it seems like from the bit that I've done following the Dakar Rally, it seems like where you're located, you're also very remote. Like you're not, they don't put the service anywhere near like the population centers. You're just wherever you need to be, just out there.
You're literally in the middle of nowhere. Like at first there was like some concern. I'm like, okay, being a woman in that country, it's like, okay, like, do
Mhm.
I need to bring special clothes to wear? Like, how often are we going to be in public? And they're like, don't worry about it. Like,
Ah,
you literally travel as like a small city through this country. You know, you're even when you're in transit, you're getting passed by the motorcycles because the motorcycles leave the earliest at like
right.
5 a.m. and stuff. So by the time you get on your transit road, you're getting passed by the bikes and stuff. So and trucks, and it's just nuts. But you never really go into any sort of civilization. It's a
Okay.
town on wheels.
Have you been anywhere that felt similar to that? I guess, I mean, desert environment. I think desert is pretty much where you guys were.
Yeah, my home. I mean, growing up in Tahoe, you're 30 minutes, 45 minutes from Reno.
Okay.
Like Saudi is honestly a really, really cool country. It's
Hmm.
like yeah, you have like this stereotypical like sand dunes, but like when you're in the mountains, it's like giant mountains and hilltops, and but they're barren. And to be
Hmm.
honest, it kind of reminds me a lot of the Sierra Nevadas out by Tahoe.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you just exchange the wild horses for camels, so
That
it's kind of
works.
cool. But we
Yeah.
don't have really random like, but there was like random like oases that you would come across, like just
Hmm.
like random fields of palm trees. I think some of them were legitimately farmed, but
Okay. Huh.
it was it's a wild it's a really cool country, to be honest. Like it's actually really, really cool. If you're into the desert and kind of like that more barren, like overlanding lifestyle, it's freaking
Yeah.
rad. Yeah, it's super cool.
Right on. Well, and as far as like an arena for this race, I mean, how challenging was it? Because that's kind of the thing with Dakar. Like when they relocated it to South America, they were like, we we want this to run through some of these like extreme places. Like I think they ran actually through the Atacama Desert, which is this crazy,
Mhm.
very high, arid desert. And they're like, yeah, that's where we want to race through. Like,
Yeah,
was it like super challenging?
it was extremely challenging. You went through almost every possible surface other than tarmac. I mean, you get that in the transit stages, but like,
Yeah.
and the thing out there is like, even though you're in the dunes, there's still like these random giant sharp rocks that will just come out of nowhere. Like, I'm pretty
Wow.
sure one of the Audi cars you just see the footage and they're just hauling ass in the desert, and then just out of nowhere, this random sharp rock just takes out their tire.
Yeah.
And so you still like, and when you're hauling ass in the desert, you don't have time to see stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's pretty insane. And then there's like hard pack, like you're like off-roading, like King of the Hammers kind of
Hmm.
stuff, and
Yeah.
it's
It's intense.
everything. It's everything. Like some days your tires will come back completely tore up, and then you're in the dunes and you can run on the same tires for weeks. It's
Right.
it's
If it
crazy.
all goes well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
Well, so how did were you I think if I understand this right, you got called in to work with an existing team, right? So you weren't having to like set this up. You're basically somebody that's going out there to help out.
yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So I worked for X-Raid, and they're based in
okay.
Germany, actually not too far from Alzenau from the Hyundai team.
Okay.
Yeah.
Little
So
connection there. Small world,
yeah,
as it were.
it
And
is.
so had they had run this race or crewed this race, so they had kind of an idea of what like the kind of things that they needed to bring, that what the services were going to be like, that sort of thing.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So they have a
Okay.
history actually with Mini Cooper, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they ran Dakar Mini Coopers and they've won, and I think they have like 10 medals from Dakar. So they're not new. They're not new to
Yeah.
Dakar. Technically, X-Raid and Q Motorsport are all owned by the same guy, so they kind of
Mm.
operate as one unit.
Okay.
When you're in Germany, you see both X-Raid and Q Motorsport. So Q Motorsport was in charge of the new electric Audis that were out there.
Right.
So that
Which
was
is,
really cool.
did you get to see those cars at a reasonable distance or?
Oh yeah, yeah. So like we basically were, they always tucked us up in like the back corner, kind of like away from it because we were so big.
Hmm.
We were essentially running three teams because you had the two Mini Coopers and the two buggies.
Hmm.
Then we had seven Yamahas, and then they had three Mini Coopers, but we all had like the same catering areas and like uh, physicians because we had doctors that travel with us and
Oh
everything. So
wow.
it was all run for the most part sent from the same area.
Okay. Man, maybe describe too, like how big is this race? Like how many competitors are there? And then like, I mean, you said it was like a small city that was moving. Like, I'm, is that not an exaggeration? Is it like hundreds and
No,
hundreds of
no, not
people?
at all. Like it's in like your own Wi-Fi towers for the most part, like travel around
Wow.
with you. Well, they actually purposely set us up in a BVAC with no Wi-Fi. At least this
Oh.
is what I'm told. I'm told that they did it on purpose to help keep the old school kind of like
Mm,
Dakar vibes of just like, okay, they should be here starting from this time. So
right. So you can't get any kind of like, you know, information like,
nobody
oh,
knew nobody knew what the hell was going on in the BVAC. The people around the world watching the race knew what was going on before we did.
oh wow.
We
So you're
had
just
no
sitting there
idea.
hoping the car shows up. You don't know when it's going to show up. It shows up with like
Mm-hmm.
two wheels and a wagon wheel on it, and like,
I
okay,
mean,
this is what we got.
yeah, we had satellite phones and stuff. So like there were a select few that were having communication like within the teams and stuff, but like when you have 250 people,
Yeah,
no, it's like a game of telephone. So like even
yeah,
if you're getting information, it's like, is it correct?
right.
Because to be honest, like the the last marathon that they had, I'm pretty sure it was the first day. Everything just like blurs together. But
Yeah, I bet. I bet.
but the first day of the second marathon, the car that I was on ended up rolling and crashing out. And so because this was at the service area where no one knew what was going on, there was rumors like, oh, they're done. No, they're going to do the stage tomorrow, or oh, we're going to fix it and they're going to finish the race, or no, it's not fixable. So like we were literally, even with the car in the service area, not knowing what to do with this
Not
thing yet.
100% sure. Wow.
Yeah.
That is hard as a crew person because like you can only like assess the situation as best as you're given information. And like if you're not sure, like, hey, we have to try and scramble because we want to keep this thing going, or like the way
Yeah.
where the accident happened, we've already DNF'd, so there's no point in fixing it. Like that's got to be a challenge in and of itself.
We just figured, you know what, we'll just start reprepping the car like we're gonna run it tomorrow and
Yeah,
wait for them to tell us to stop.
right. It's
That's what we
probably
did.
it's probably all you can do.
Yeah. So unfortunately, my time at Dakar, I worked on two different cars and they both rolled and DNF'd. So actually
Yeah.
my original car DNF'd the first day.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was just like a ghost hump in the road and they went ass over
Yeah.
face a couple times and
But this year there was a lot of attrition. Like those Audis, the electric Audis, they had a lot of trouble. It looked like it's a tough race. Like it is a tough race.
yeah, I mean it takes it claims a lot of vehicles.
I
That's
mean,
for sure.
I think usually in rally, I figure if you're in the top, if you can finish, you're going to be in the top 50%. And I think in
Hmm.
Dakar, especially over the length of it, I mean,
Yeah,
40% finishers, maybe like 35% actually finish the race.
yeah. So I'm pretty sure I I want to say of we basically they treated like the buggies and the minis, they were all one team, so there was a total of four, and I'm pretty sure three of the four finished, if not all four, don't quote me on it.
Okay.
Um, I believe one of the Audis of three finished,
Yeah.
and then five of the seven Yamahas that we brought finished.
Okay. So
So
maybe
we had
still,
a good rate. It was
yeah,
good. So,
it's with, I mean, with rally, I mean, you kind of know what you're getting into, but it is like all of the racing is kind of broken up into small-ish chunks, and it's over a couple of days. I mean, the whole race is maybe like tech to breaking down everything, maybe 5 days, 5 or 6 days, and like here you're talking about weeks. Like,
well, and you get to do recce in rally.
right, right, which
There's
is
no pre-running,
it's true.
nothing like that in Dakar. You get your road book from the organizers, and that's it. Send
So,
it.
so for you as like knowing what you knew of what the race was, like was the difficulty of the race was probably the challenges that you were going to face as a crew person. Was that one of the reasons you were excited about it, or was that kind of whether you're like, man, this could be real challenging?
I kind of did it like I've always wanted to do it because it's kind of like that concept of like taming the beast. Can you conquer it? It's like climbing
Yeah,
Everest. Like that's the pinnacle, like the world renowned Dakar. It's like
yeah,
I mean, just getting there for a lot of people is even tough. So just
sure.
being able to be invited onto a team was awesome. But yeah, like a lot of us got really, really sick the first, like throughout the entire race. I got really, really sick the first 5 days. And that was when we pushed the hardest. And there was a second there where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Mm,
uh,
yeah,
I was like, do I, like, if it kept going that way, I don't think I would have, I don't know. I don't know.
yeah,
I think I could have finished, but I don't think I would have been able to push as hard as I did. That's for sure. It was
sure.
really, really hard.
Man, well, it sounds like you did get a little bit better. And if you're traveling with doctors, I mean, all of a sudden, like if you're going to have that many people that are going to be working that hard for that much time, like that kind of makes it a lot of sense. I mean, you need some medical support there for everybody that's
Mhm.
even just in the panic crewing for the car and so forth.
Well, and they have like basically like a mobile hospital that travels with us too. And one of the guys actually had to stay over the night in the medic tent because he was so sick. They had to
Wow.
monitor him overnight. He ended up having bronchitis.
Oh man,
Yeah, it was really hard. It was really, really hard. We were dropping like flies all throughout.
man, I mean, it's one of those like, all right, so when you got the call, when you got the invite, how
Hmm.
long did you have to think about it before you were like, yep, let's do this. I'm in. I want to go. Was
Well,
it something like
oh no, it was immediate. It was immediate.
immediate?
Well, because when
Okay.
I left Hyundai, I think I actually posted like a social media post, like, back to freelancing. Like, I'm interested, obviously, in like rally. I'd like to do FD, open to this. I'm like, I would love to do Dakar.
Mm.
And then I think like a couple weeks later, they're like,
Somebody
"Hey,
called like, "Hey, saw you wanted to do the car. Hey, we're going. Do you want to come?"
yeah,
And you're
I'm
just like
trying to
all in. Wow.
think how I got. Oh, my friend Jerome, he's a truck driver for Q Motorsport, and we'd like cross paths like for the last like 6 years around the world in motorsport, and he's like, they're
Hmm.
looking for mechanics. You want to do it? And I said, yes. Give them my
Wow.
information.
Okay.
So
Man,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that's awesome. I mean, would you say that that is just kind of when you get an opportunity like that, or when you're presented with a challenge like that, are you just you just go for it? Is that kind of usually your mentality? Yeah.
More or less. Yeah. I mean, so while I was actually out there, one of the guys I was working with, he's from Spain and he does a lot of off-roading. And he was saying that it would actually be, he's like, he brought up the fact that apparently it's kind of hard to find a co-driver with like really like good mechanical skills. Like everybody has to know how to change like a wheel and tire and
Yeah.
stuff, but other than like that and blah 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 blah, it's
Well, and
finding a
that's
genuinely good mechanic as a co-driver is difficult. And he's like, you should try it. And
well,
so
and
I literally got back to the US and I started making phone calls.
ah,
So
okay,
I'm gonna start co-driving.
okay, very cool.
Yeah,
Well, and for that race especially because where the driver and co-driver where they're out there, like you can only help them at the services. So like they're on their own
exactly.
on stage.
So one really, really cool thing that I found out. So like one of the things how I learned about Dakar, I remember like watching YouTube videos and like something popped up with these trucks just hauling ass in the desert, like
Yeah,
these giant trucks.
which are the
And
best. Yes.
it was so freaking cool. So
Yeah.
I found out that apparently the majority of those trucks you see are not actually genuinely there to race.
Mm,
A lot of them are, but because the rules are if you break down on the stage, only the people in the car or other competitors can help you.
right.
So the loophole is these teams, like for example, our team, even though we have Audis, Yamahas, whatever, we entered one of these big ass trucks in the rally and packed the truck with spare parts for
Yeah.
all of the different cars.
Yeah.
So a lot of these teams will do that. So like we actually had to have like I think a gearbox replaced on the stage one night. So the big T5 truck went out there because they all start after the competitors
Right.
anyways. So they're
Right.
already out there. So
Yeah. Well,
those
it's such a
trucks are
big
mostly service trucks. They're not race trucks. I mean, but they're still
right.
technically entering the race.
I mean, it's a race on their own, and they're
Yeah.
servicing the cars too, like carrying spares. And I think a lot of the teams they'll have like a main lead car or like their main car, and then like the next two cars that they're running, they're support vehicles. So like, hey, if you're having a good race, but he's ahead of you and he has a flat, you have to give him your spare because
Hmm.
we want him,
Exactly.
we want our number one driver, number one car to have the best chance at winning, and you guys are basically just there to support him.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is
Hmm.
which is a wild strategy, but for a race over this distance, over this much time, I mean, you've got to do something like that.
Yep. I think in the moto class, over the course of 15 days, the difference between the first and second place finisher was like 30 seconds.
Wow,
It was
that's
insane.
crazy.
It was a really, really good race between the bikes to watch.
Yeah, I will tell people if you're listening and you're curious, there's a lot of good YouTube coverage, which I'm pretty sure is still up there. So you got to go back and watch some of this stuff. I mean, it's
There's,
it's an
it's,
insane race.
yeah, it's insane. Like there was, like with all of this rain, there was one stage where they have footage of these like side by sides and the water is up halfway up to the doors and there's like drivers on the roof like trying to flag down trucks to pull
Yeah,
them out and like there was one, so we had a BVAC that was actually canceled because it got flooded out, so we
mm,
had to skip it and go to the next, and the stage the next day was too dangerous for, so they wasn't too dangerous for the race, but they decided that the bikes and the quads wouldn't run.
yeah,
But during that whole storm, like the next stage, like there's literally you see footage of like there's a co-driver in this like river with a strap on his side by side, like
yeah.
trying to like pull
they were getting
out this side by side from a freaking random river that just pops up out of nowhere. And
yeah,
like it just the footage was wild. Like watching
yeah.
the bikes and the dunes like five together, it was like kids in a playground again, and like it's like really kind of inspired me to kind of get a motorcycle and play in the dirt.
It's 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 crazy what they go through, but at the same time, it's like, man, they're doing all this in the middle of nowhere. Like to be on your bike, going over all these dunes or all these obstacles, in like just in the middle of nowhere, and you can get lost. I mean, they've got like the rolling maps and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't think they're allowed GPS. I
No, no,
believe.
no. So the Dakar road books are literally just like the bikes. It's all the
Yeah.
hand scrolled paper road book. But the
Yep.
cars have like a basically like an iPad in there. So
Right.
it's an electronic road book, but there's no GPS.
Yeah. Because they want to make the navigation the challenge part of the challenge.
Right. And so that's the kind of co-driving that I'm interested in doing.
Hmm.
I got a friend and she's like, I'll throw you in my car. I'm like, I'm afraid to let you down, dude. I don't think I
Yeah.
can keep up with pace notes.
Yeah. Co-driving, even just co-driving for directions is its own set of challenges.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's some people that are like really, really adept at it. And then like I think I would be terrible at it because I get motion sick really bad if I'm trying to read anything. And then like that's just that you can't do that.
Yeah, I
So
was a little concerned about that at first, to be honest. But I was like, well, I've gone for a ride in a WRC car on a stage, and like at our test facility, they like tried to make me puke, and that didn't happen. So I'm like, I think I'll be okay. I
yeah,
did like 10 hours of recce once too, so I'm like, I think I'll be all right. But
it's absolutely worth trying. That
yeah,
was
I
going to be
mean,
one of my questions is like you've been on it from the crew side, like would you want to be a competitor in something like this? And it sounds like the answer is yes.
yeah, absolutely. So I actually got a phone call, let's see, last Tuesday, and from the Jesse Combs Foundation, and they're like,
Mhm.
"What are you doing this weekend?" I was like, I don't know, building my drift trick. I don't
Yeah.
know. They're like, "Do you want to come to King of the Hammers?" And I was like, "Funny you say that." Because I'm
Yeah.
trying to basically network and find sponsors and basically find a team or somebody that's willing to throw me in the right seat of their car with no navigational experience. And that kind of racing is what I'm interested in doing. So I was like, I'll come down there, help you guys fundraise, meet some people and kind of get things going. So I think it was a successful weekend.
Very cool. I saw
Oh
some pictures. So okay, explain what King of the Hammers is.
my gosh.
So for
Okay.
people,
So
okay.
King of the Hammers is basically like Burning Man for off-road.
Right. Yeah.
It's 2 weeks more or less of racing, but it's not like one class consistently from from what I've been learning. They'll have like certain classes have a race on certain days. They have like different challenges. So there's like the Everyman Challenge, which if I'm not mistaken is more or less like the stock vehicle class. And I think they're like dropout rates like 50%. Like if you can just finish the Everyman Challenge,
Yeah.
like you're stoked.
Yeah.
So, but like after the races at night, like everybody goes out into the hills and like does so you've got like the names of these places are wild. So you have Backdoor,
Hmm.
Chocolate Thunder, like
Okay.
Spooners.
Yeah.
So it's
Well, and
but
talk about the racing too, because it's like this is something I don't, it's probably like 10 or 15 years old, but it kind of came out of nowhere and it was kind of this extreme idea. It's in the vein of like a Dakar rally where they're like,
yeah,
what is the most crazy
honestly,
extreme off-road thing we can do? That's kind of where this came out of.
that's basically what it is. It's like because and like that's the thing too is like you're rock crawling in
Yeah,
King of the Hammers, and I didn't see any of that in Dakar. So like there is a little
right.
different of an aspect. And I think in the 4 days I was at King of the Hammers, it was way dustier than the 3 weeks in Dakar.
Dang.
The sand
Yeah,
is heavier, I think, in Saudi Arabia than the fine silt out at King of the Hammers.
sure.
So
I could believe it.
it was crazy.
Well, and the crazy thing about King of the Hammers is it like it's rock crawling. So it's over like big obstacles. So you need trucks that can go over like really big obstacles, like really big
Mm-hmm.
tires,
Yep.
lots of low gearing and stuff like that. But then what they decided to do, like at least part of it is like, okay, you're going to do go over all these obstacles, whereas normally the challenge is just to make it. Well, now we're going to time you, and now you got to go
Hmm.
fast.
Yep.
And they built a circuit, so you're going over all this crazy stuff, crazy obstacles. Then you come down, and then there's other sections that are not technical that you can go faster. So if you build a truck that's really good on going over the obstacles, but it can't go faster than like 30 miles an hour, you're going to get crushed on the higher speed sections. And it's
Hmm.
just, and then I think that, don't they do multiple laps? Like you have to go around multiple
Yep.
times.
Yep. They
Yeah.
do multiple laps, and like we were the where we were able to watch the race, one of the days we were like at a split, so you could like kind of decide a route to take, which brings me to another point. So Dakar with the classics, they have the option for what's called a chicken loop.
Hmm.
So if they were like, this looks a little too sketchy, they can like go around and like take a different route, a little more bearable for the old classic cars.
Well, in the classics, that's much closer to a stock car in Dakar, right? It's not some crazy purpose-built off-road
Yeah, so
thing.
I actually went around one night waiting for my car to come back. And there was a team there with a couple of these old Porsches. And so they were telling us that for the most part, it's all, they'll change the suspension and obviously lift it a little bit and put bigger wheels and tires and stuff on that. But for the most part, they don't really do much with like the control arms and stuff like that. It's all
Yeah.
stock.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's in the vein of the Class 11 buggies, the stock
Hmm.
VW Beetles that race in Baja, or
Yeah.
like it's. I mean, those guys are. I mean, from what I've heard, those guys are the most intense guys because you're running a stock bug in Baja, like with just a little bit bigger tires and stuff like that. I mean, that's hardcore.
They gotta wear kidney belts in those things or something. There's no
Yeah,
way.
it's bananas. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
man. Well, so King of the Hammers was a good experience.
It was great. It was amazing. It was super cool. I just, yeah, it's kind of like Burning Man. Well, at least I assume I haven't been to Burning Man, but you see all kinds of goofy rigs out there and
Yeah.
custom stuff, and people are partying all day. But amazingly, like it's an organized chaos.
Well,
It's
for something
weird.
like that, it would have to be. I mean, you can have a lot of fun too, but like I mean, it's a huge challenge. Like
Mhm.
that is not a race that you can just easily jump into, I don't think.
Yeah,
But
like going out to one of the spectator spots, like out on the lake when the wind kicks up, there was a point where I remember looking out and like it was kind of like the scene from Independence Day when they're like driving across the lake bed and
oh
there's
yeah.
just cars forever, like from side to side, and then the wind kicks up and you can't see more than like 3 inches in front of your vehicle. And it's like you just stop and you hope that no one just sideswipes you. And somehow, yeah, I mean, there's
Yeah.
accidents out there, but I think for the most part, it was a pretty safe event.
Sure, sure. Yeah. Well, I remember even in the Colorado Hill Climb series, when King of the Hammers started, that people started running the rock crawlers up the hill climb series. And the reason was because there were sections where you had to go fast. And so some of these guys realized, well, I need to practice taking this big purpose-built rock crawler thing and like change the gearing a little bit and see what it does at like 60 miles an hour. Can I do that? And they started
Mhm.
just figuring out all sorts of stuff there. It's a wild challenge in and of itself for sure. Like the
Yeah,
people that
I
try
mean,
and run stock or closer to stock trucks and stuff out there, that's insane.
yeah, it's pretty wild. I know they're like, you're gonna get in a trophy truck. I'm like, to be honest, yeah, it would be cool, but I kind of like, well, the smaller stuff for a co-driver is a little easier for me to work on.
Sure.
So I don't
Well,
want
and
to make myself look like too much of an ass if I have to get out and actually like change a wheel and
well,
tire.
well, those side by sides, because you mentioned that's a class in Dakar, and they've got them at King of the Hammers now too.
Mhm,
What
mhm.
those, I mean, they're I think those vehicles they have really progressed a lot in the last
Yeah,
handful of years. Like
I
there's
mean,
a couple people that are running them in the U.S. Rally Series,
mhm.
and they're finding all sorts of stuff to do with them.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of surprised on how big that UTV scene has been getting over the last like decade or so. I mean, like everybody's doing it now. I'm like, it's nice too because like the parts are nice. You can pick up almost.
Yeah,
I mean, if I really put my heart into it, I could probably lift one of those engines too. I mean, it's great. It's
Yeah,
amazing. It's
they're
awesome.
small. We
It's
we we
great.
had we talked to Reese Millen a while back, and
Oh, cool.
he has built one of those that he was running. I think when we caught up with him, he had just actually won the Nora Rally in his vehicle that he had designed that's based on a UTV, and it's modified somewhat, but I think he can run it either with the stock engine or with a small 8-cylinder engine that they'd put into it. But one of the
Mm-hmm.
things he had said is that they actually handle well instead of like the trophy trucks, which are just these big, heavy things that are designed to go really fast over everything, but you can't turn them.
Yeah.
And they get terrible fuel economy because they, are not aerodynamic and they weigh, 6,000, 7,000 pounds. So these little side by sides, you modify it so it's got better suspension, better brakes, and all of a sudden you've got a car that gets way better fuel economy, so it doesn't have to be as heavy. It's nimble, and he's had a lot of success racing those against trophy trucks because it can exploit some of the benefits of the fact that it is small, but it's a capable chassis.
Yeah, I think I heard of actually, like, I don't know who, if it was even, I don't think it was this year, but there was apparently a side by side in Dakar that I think got like overall like second fastest time or something for the day, some shit like
Wow.
that. I'm like, so
If
like
everything,
if you can drive them, they'll go. Like they'll
yeah.
do their job. So it's
Well,
pretty cool.
I remember talking to one of the local guys that was looking at basically getting it certified to run in the rally classes, and they had to add safety to it. So like better cage around the top, and like they don't have doors, so there had to be something there for that. But
Hmm.
their point was that you go and you buy one of the fancier ones that has a turbocharged engine, and you put on the safety equipment, and that's kind of all you have to do. So for like a vehicle that can be competitive in rally in its class, I mean, it's not competing against everything, but like actually the amount of energy that it takes to build a car to be out there to have fun and be competitive was not that much. Way easier than taking a stock car off the street, your grandmother's and present, and building it into a rally car.
Right.
So I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
one,
I mean these Yamahas are completely different than what you can just go and pick
yeah.
up. But I mean like I know like X-Ray, the chassis that they're running this year are different than last year. And with the two rolls that they had, they were actually really happy with the fabrication that, because the the FIA said you can't race anymore, but there wasn't any tubing that was actually broken, no
Hmm,
weldings that were cracked, nothing. It was just bent tubes. So like
that's huge.
if you can build these things correctly, they'll friggin' go. They'll go.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting platform, and more and more people are figuring out ways to play with them. That's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So Heather, as we're winding down a little bit, I just want to ask, kind of what do you want to do? So like you mentioned getting into a co-driver seat, so like becoming more of a competitor. Is that kind of
Yeah.
where you're thinking that like is that something that now is the new challenge that you want to take on?
Hmm. Yeah, that's the one. There has with some potential sponsors, there's even been the idea and the thought about driving.
Hmm.
Um, but the issue is finding someone that's got enough faith and funding to be willing to throw you in the driver's seat. I mean, even the co-driver seat for that matter. I just figured that co-driving is probably a little bit more realistic at this point in time. But
Well, it's a
there are
start.
some things in the works that have happened while I was at King of the Hammers that I think
Very cool.
the cards were given and I just need to play them correctly. So I'm looking for sponsors. I was fitted for race suits and helmets last week, and
That's a positive.
yeah, so we're gonna go racing in some way, shape, or form. I don't know how often this year. There's actually been a guy who is based out of Utah who is looking for a co-driver for the Baja 1000. So
Oh
I'll
wow.
be, yeah, dude, that's crazy. I'm like, oh, dude, I told him, I'm like, I have no actual experience. And this is the 1000 for my first event. He's like, it's cool. We'll go pre-running. Like, if
I-
you have the
Yeah.
time, can you go testing? So
With Baja, there's a lot
hopefully,
of pre-running. So you've got a lot of chance to kind of get the feel for it.
Yeah, yeah. And like I said, like I'm very lucky with the time that I've spent at the level that I have in motorsport. So there's a huge part of that world that I already know that takes years for people to learn.
Sure.
So um
Would you say that part of it, I mean, you kind of alluded to this earlier, but like being involved in the environment, like just being at the event, being like you're a crew member, but you're meeting people, you're in the environment, you're meeting people that are, like I said, your friend that drives a truck for this other team or other teams. Just being open to the experience and just being present in whatever capacity, has that kind of planted the seed so that like through time and through being there more and more opportunities have presented themselves.
oh, it's all about who you meet. It really is. Like it's oh no, I'm so sorry. Send a
That's
voice.
okay. It's all right.
Daniel was trying to call me. It's my little brother. I'm at his house, but
Oh my. Okay. We'll forgive
yeah.
him.
um but yeah, it's really all like you meet people, and it's really important, to be honest. I think networking is really, really huge, because if people can basically, like, for example, I reached out to Warren Industries this weekend, or last week actually.
Hmm.
And they, at least sent a reply, and they're like, okay, our guy's gonna get a hold of you. This is his name, expect to look out within the next month for a response. Well, I actually got to meet him face to face this weekend.
Nice.
So he can put a face and a personality behind the pitch deck,
Yeah.
and the thing with motorsport is like, there's the good old boys club, and I think we might have talked about this last episode. And it's frustrating if you're not in the club, but at the same time, like, this is a sport where you need to be able to trust everybody that you're working with, whether it's a sponsorship or part of the crew or whatever. And so if you basically build up this trust with these other people, then they're more willing to put their neck out and help you out, and vice versa. So it's
For
it's
sure.
really, really important who you meet, and
And
it's
just
like
being
kind
at
of
the event.
kind of
Yeah.
like Ken Block said, don't be an asshole.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be working through this race that's like super difficult, there's going to be a lot of attrition. There's going to be things that break. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and what happens. Like you want somebody that's going through all this experience that's at least it's fun to be with, has a good sense of humor, is not
Mhm.
too like intense or whatever. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, being able to mesh well is like, it's just,
Yeah,
honestly, I just wish there were more team managers, principals, whatever, that understood this concept. Like, the mesh of a team is so friggin' important. I
yeah,
would rather have a crew that has no experience, that gets along as thick as thieves, than a bunch
yeah,
of dudes with 20 years of experience that hate each other. You know what I mean?
for sure. And that's
It's so
that's
important.
that's good advice for life, honestly.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, it
I
really
mean,
is.
it's if you're going to work at a shop and whatnot and nobody gets along, it's it's probably not going to be a whole lot of fun most days.
Well,
Yeah.
when
And
you're
if it's
fun, you're succeeding, in my opinion. So, like, have fun, succeed, do cool shit.
yeah, for sure. And it's way easier to deal with problems and adversity if you've got a team you can count on, if you can like, hey, I just did this thing, but it broke, and you're not going to get yelled at, you know, feel like you might get fired or something like that. If you've got somebody that's going to listen to you, help you find a solution, point you to
Mhm.
the person that's going to help you find a solution, that's a way more positive environment to be a part of for sure.
I mean, there was one time where I was leaving a dealership, but because I had such a good relationship with the guys there, they're like, "You can't go. Like,
Yeah,
what can we do?" I'm like, "There's nothing at this point. Sorry."
right.
But I mean, yeah, just working harmoniously with your team, your coworkers, is so important and so
Yeah.
nice.
The other question, kind of along those lines, that I wanted to ask is because you have now done so much. I mean, you are probably getting to the point where all of your experiences put you in a pretty small group of people that have been able to try their hand at so many different racing venues and types of racing and stuff like that. That in and of itself has to be hugely helpful. But as far as if you want to get into motorsports, but you don't have the budget to build the car, but you have maybe the ability or the time to help out on the car, crew with the car. How much do you think down the road gives you a chance of succeeding or getting involved in motorsports by being a part in like the fringes to build up the experience and like I know what it's like to be a crew member. I know what it's like to be like the gopher for the crew, that I just run into town and get the stuff that they need. Like, does that all play a part of it as well?
It's super huge. It's super huge. Like when I was talking with all kinds of people this weekend, at first they're just some girl that says she's a race car mechanic, and then they start the questions. Oh, well, what have you done? Who have you worked for?
Hmm.
And then the attitude completely changes. So, um, it's yeah, it's I think it shows that I'm motivated in my line of work, my commitment to the sport, um,
Yeah.
the dedication, the sacrifices, because it's huge. It's really huge. A lot of people, it's very difficult to be able to sacrifice a social life, more or less,
Yeah.
um, to
But,
to do this.
yeah. And it just shows that you know what it actually is all about and what's involved. It's not just like the fun stuff that you see on TV or on YouTube. You know what like the whole thing is about, like getting to the event, setting up, all of the hard stuff that you don't
Yeah,
see or hear about most times.
yeah, yeah. And I think too, when you have a history and a resume at that, like sometimes it can be beneficial. Don't get me wrong, like I love all kinds of cars, all kinds of shit, but there is kind of a level where things that used to get me really excited, like, oh, that is so cool. The stuff I've seen has topped that now. So you kind of get a bit of a numbness to some of the stuff you're around. And sometimes that's kind of looked for.
Mm, yeah,
Um, New kids in the industry, I mean, don't get me wrong, like I love my job and I know how friggin' cool it is and rare and stuff, but at the same time, like it's sometimes difficult. I know I had an issue with it when I first started. When you're just in awe and the focus on the job is difficult because you're surrounded by all of Travis Pastrana and Bucky Lasek and Ken Block and Tanner Faust,
hmm,
and you've got, so it's hard sometimes when you have a new kid. It's
sure.
like, are they in it just to be in the scene because it's cool,
Yeah,
or are they genuinely passionate about the sport and the job? So I think sometimes if you can build up that resume and have a history of it, it shows people, okay, maybe she's a little bit more serious and she's
yeah.
just does, you know what I mean? Like
Oh
it's
yeah.
not like just some kid that I just want to be around race cars.
Well, it's
Like
like
this is
that's
genuinely
that's
what I love.
that's the lure. That's what gets people in, is like, I want to be around these really cool cars, but then you're there and it's like, okay, well, now you're here and you're seeing all these cool things, but you still have a job to do. Can you still get the job done and be excited by it, or like let yourself fan out for a minute, but then get back down to business and take care of the task in hand.
Well, especially as a mechanic. Anyone in
Yeah,
motorsport knows mechanics don't I don't make a lot of money. People see me
right,
traveling around the world and they're like, "Oh my God, I want to do what she does. She makes a lot of money." And I'm like, I literally travel for free. I have to. I can't do it any other way.
right.
I could literally go manage a Jiffy Lube and make twice the money if I wanted to.
Sure.
So when you have a resume for a history with, years and years
Yeah.
and knowing she doesn't make shit for money, okay,
There's
she's
something else there.
passionate about it. There's something there.
Yeah. Just maybe to wrap that up, would you say that like the fact that now you don't have, like, you see all these cool cars and it's not like this huge excitement around it, but you're still interested in it. Does that tell you that you're really in the right place? It's not just because there's this cool thing that you want to go out there and see. Now you're in it and you've seen so many cool things. You're just like, yeah, that's the new all electric Audi. They're doing something with it, whatever, for Dakar, whatever. But
No, it's still really cool shit.
yeah,
My dad always told me that you'd know what you wanted to do when it gave you the goosebumps.
mm,
And like even still to this day, like I know I'm in the right spot because I know there's a lot of hate with the electric cars, but even those things under the right conditions are wild and get me going. So
yeah.
like I still get the goosebumps almost every time I'm somewhere.
Is it
So
is it because of how cool the car is? Is it because of the challenge of what you're doing?
I
What do you
think it's the
think?
situation. you know, like the like the in the moment situation, you know, it's like even in Dakar and the podium and my car didn't finish and I was a little bummed. I'm like, I'm literally in Saudi Arabia with these giant trucks driving across this beautiful giant podium in the middle of the freaking desert with F-35s flying above me. And it's like, that's rad.
That's crazy.
Or even just watching it on the TV and you see these bikes, they're just jumping these dunes and just watching it gives you the goosebumps. Like that's so freaking cool to me. I just
Yeah.
love it. I love
Yeah.
it.
That is
So
awesome. Well, and
yeah.
and you think driving might be the same thing? Do you think that's something that you'd want to explore? Yeah.
Well, I grew up ski racing
Hmm.
and I actually autocrossed my car for like 5 years. I couldn't do it habitually, but I genuinely think if I did, I probably could have been pretty decent at it, you know, and Dirt Fishes gave me some lessons and stuff.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
um I've been around some really cool cars and going karting with some really cool people before too. So I I think I could be I think after a little bit of seat time I'd be pretty good at it.
for sure. Well, that I mean it's almost the same kind of thing as you've got to be passionate about it. It's got to like scratch that itch, like to compete and to go out there.
Yeah. Like
But
no joke, for a week after I got back from Dakar, I've dreamt about off-roading every night.
I can
Like
believe
no
it.
joke. It's
Yeah.
freaking wild
Well,
in
then
some
and
way,
then to
shape,
go
or
to
form.
yeah, then to go to King of the Hammers after that and see like here's this other like crazy test of being able to do this stuff. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Man. Yeah, you're probably you're forcing yourself to consider getting in the driver's seat or at least the co-driver's seat. Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah.
very cool. I'm
Thank you.
you just keep putting the energy and the time into it. I'm sure things are going to fall into place.
Thank
So
you.
that's very cool to see.
Thanks,
Um,
Daniel.
as we're wrapping up here, is there anything else that you wanted to talk about? I maybe wanted to ask because you had mentioned if I have this right that you found there was a lot more women crew out at Dakar than than normal. Like was that kind of a cool experience to see?
Yeah, that was super cool. I met two other ladies. They worked for the team's called Astara, and they ran like some prototype truck thing with a female driver.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, and I connected with these ladies. It was just cool because like I know M Sport has a WRC mechanic also, but I never got a chance to actually talk to her.
Yeah.
And like it was cool because these girls totally like open arms. They were the mechanics for one of my drivers last season too, so it just was really cool, you know. Like you don't ever really get to see them out in the wild, you know. So
Hmm.
it was really cool, and I like looked these girls up on social media and like they're doing rad stuff like road racing, you know, endurance 24 hour. They were one of them was in Daytona. So like
Wow.
it was
That's
really
awesome.
cool. It's cool. I feel kind of silly, but it's cool.
No, it's
You
awesome.
don't you don't see it. And for me, I think I've mentioned it before. It's like the more ladies that are there, the less weird it is for other people, you know, and the less kind of a circus show it might seem to be. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's becoming more the norm instead of the unusual thing.
and
Well,
yeah, I don't know if it's an off-road thing, but there's a crap load of ladies down there at King of the Hammers too. It was really cool.
is that why the Jesse Combs Foundation was down there, or some people from the Jesse Combs Foundation was?
So that was actually Jessie's like playground. That was her backyard.
She ran it a few times, didn't she? Like
She was
ran
first
in the race.
she was
Yeah.
first queen of the Hammers. Yeah, actually. So the Jeep that she won the Everyman challenge and they didn't know where it was for a while.
Oh
Found
no.
the owner, offered to buy it off of him, and he's like, I'm just gonna donate it. So we actually were able to have Jesse's Jeep at King of the
Wow.
Hammers. Um and I got to drive her.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
I got to
awesome.
drive her. So I'm actually working with them and we're gonna figure out how to kind of get Goldie back into shape and figure out what we're gonna do with Goldie and see if we keep her as a show piece, educational piece, or if we're gonna do her as like we're gonna keep her in the dirt and maybe put some ladies behind the wheel. I don't know. but
Man,
I get
that
to be
is,
part of that history in the process. They're going to try to start recording the history of the car and all that stuff. So
yeah,
it's cool. Yeah.
for such an iconic car like that, it's so like you will kind of want to preserve it because it did something really
Yeah.
cool and it has a lot of history. But with race
Hmm.
cars, it's like they're race cars. They're meant to be
Right.
doing stuff.
Right.
It's
And they're
like,
like, yeah, they're like, we feel Jesse would still want us to use her, but like at the same time, it's so because she sat in the Peterson too.
mhm.
So she's a show, she's been in museums. So it's like, what do we do? Because we don't want to wreck her either, but whatever. So
That
that's for them to figure out. I'm
that's
just
a
here
hard
to
one.
help and do what I
Yeah,
can. So
very cool. And so because of that, is the Jesse Combs Foundation, is that one of the areas that they're trying to really help more women mechanics and women competitors get involved with in that race specifically or that type of racing?
not necessarily. It's just what we have access to at the
Hmm,
moment, because that was Jesse's thing was more of the off-roading stuff. I think if
sure.
Jesse was maybe into drag racing and we were able to get a drag car, then maybe we
Right.
would do something with that. But it's more, I think that was her world. So
Sure, sure. It makes total sense, and it's very cool that you guys were able to go down there. I mean, it's amazing that you guys were able to track the car down or the Jeep
yeah, it
down.
was really,
So
really awesome. So actually, Joey Savvy from her main sponsor there for the truck, the one that basically had gave her the chance. He he
mhm.
he donated it back to the foundation. So that was really,
That's
really,
awesome.
yeah.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
Well, Heather, thank you again so much for your time. Thanks for making the time to stand and chat with us again and come back and tell us all these new tales of adventure.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, if you co-drive in the Baja, I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to twist your arm to come back on and tell us what that's like, or
I am
even just get
totally
involved
down.
with Baja. Nope,
Yeah, I mean, whatever's covered. You know how to get a hold of me.
I do, I do. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much.
Cool.
Thanks for making the time because I know that this was a little bit unplanned, so really appreciate it. Best of luck in the future endeavors, and we're going to be we'll keep an eye out. And if you ever
Awesome.
have something else cool that you want to come on and talk to us about, by all means, just send the word.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, John.
All right, thanks, Heather. Take
Have a
care.
good one. Bye bye.
Thanks everyone for tuning in to the Flatirons Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. Once again, we'd like to let you know that your support is what makes this show possible. Be sure to check out our online store at flatironstuning.com for any of your aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts needs. And as always, stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning.